Seated. So I have no idea how to segue from that to what I'm about to do. However, one announcement I did fail to make earlier is that next Sunday, right after worship, we're going to be having a church meeting, and our search committee for the interim during my sabbatical is going to present the candidate to you. So anyway, please plan to stay after church next Sunday for that meeting. So here now, the gospel according to Mark. He then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. The Greek word means finger in the face, you know, that kind of rebuke. But when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter, said, "Get behind me, Satan." He said, "You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." Then he called the crowd to him along with his disciples, and he said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels." He was young. He was handsome. He was reckless. Join Tom Cruise as he goes through flight school, a school called Top Gun. Watch him as he goes through the school, has a humbling situation in his life, and then emerges the best pilot on the ship. He was young. He was handsome. He was reckless. Watch Tom Cruise as a talented race car driver joins the NASCAR circuit, and he has a humbling experience, and then he rises above to win the race and win it all. He was young. He was handsome and a talented lawyer. Watch Tom Cruise, a young Navy JAG, have a humbling experience and then come back and win the case in court. He was young. He was reckless. He was ambitious. He was a yuppie. And he finds out his daddy gave his whole huge multi-million-dollar estate to his autistic savant brother. So join Tom Cruise as he drives in an old Buick, and he becomes humbled by the situation, only to emerge as a much better guy. He was handsome. He was reckless, arrogant, and the best sports agent anyone ever knew. Then one night in reckless abandon, he wrote a manifesto and found himself out of the whole industry in one day. Watch Tom Cruise go through this humbling experience and changed by it to become the best agent in all the world, but a nicer guy. I don't have another one in me, I'm sorry. But I don't know about you, but it seemed like Tom Cruise for a period of time kind of did the same movie over and over and over and over again. But this storyline is not something that's unique to Tom Cruise and the movies that he made. This is what we call the hero story. Joseph Campbell wrote a whole book on it, A Hero with 1,000 Faces. Greek mythology. We have a teacher here. Greek mythology. What did the hero always have to do before he could save the day? He had to go through all this trials and tribulation to discover his courage, to discover his true self, you see. But in all those cases, Tom Cruise and all the stories of King Arthur and Camelot, all of them have something in common. They had to go through difficult trials to discover their soul. For what is it to gain the whole world and forfeit your soul? Am I right? What is it to gain the whole world and forfeit your soul? How much is your soul worth? This is the question that Jesus was asking his disciples, and it's the question that he continues to ask us today. There was a man born in a small town to a conservative Jewish family. He worked faithfully in his father's workshop until age 30. He took on the elders and the chief priests and the traditions of his day. He spent time in the wilderness discovering who he is and what his soul is all about. And he stuck with his plan even if it meant the cross. I know, just when the disciples had fled and everybody thought the story was over, just when you thought it was over, just when you thought there was no hope, Jesus emerges. He rises again. And he continues to teach us over and over again that your soul is worth more than anything in the universe. For God, we become flesh and dwell among us to prove the point. You see. Your soul, what is it worth? You see, Jesus says if you want to be his disciples, you have to pick up your cross and follow him. You have to deny yourself. Those who want to save their lives will lose it, and those who will lose their lives for his sake will find it. What does that mean? Does that mean we all have to go off from here and go to some dangerous place on the planet and be martyred? Well, I'm not booking any tickets for that, but maybe not. It might be something even more basic than that. I know that when I was growing up and I heard about picking up your cross, it meant that I had to be suffering for Jesus in some way, and if there wasn't something actually there to suffer over, I had to create it to make it look like I was suffering, right? I picked a perfect profession for martyrdom, all right? Seriously. Many of you here know what it is to be a martyr, day in and day out and day in. We can write a movie about you. They were giving, they were kind, they were devout, and they martyred themselves for Jesus every single day, you see. But it's more than that. It's more than that. It's a lot more than that. When I was in seminary, I was introduced to an author named Will Campbell. He grew up in Mississippi. Even though he grew up in a very traditional Southern Baptist family and a very bigoted South, his parents somehow were more tolerant than those around him. The Bibles in the pews in the church he attended had the KK symbol blazoned upon them. That's how bad it was. And he went on to get a bachelor's degree and a master's degree and a PhD at Yale Divinity School. He wrote a book, Brother to a Dragonfly, which is autobiographical. He got so fed up with the system that he moved to Tennessee. A man with a PhD moved to Tennessee and decided he wanted to be a farmer. And in the middle of one of his fields, he built a chapel with no roof on it. And he preached there every week for anybody who wanted to come and listen. Because he had been reborn and remade from his life experience. And I got a chance to see him at Stetson University at pastor school in 1999. I don't remember anything else about that school other than this. Seeing Will Campbell looking down at me, not just me, everybody there, but it felt like me. And his glasses had fallen down on his nose a little bit. And he said, "Your soul belongs only to God. It doesn't belong to your mama or your daddy. It doesn't belong to your church. It doesn't belong to your school. It doesn't belong to your race. It doesn't belong to your culture. Your soul belongs only to God." How many of us know what that is? How many of us, in the wilderness experiences that we've had, emerged to the other side knowing more clearly who we were as a soul created by God? Here's what I've learned. I'll be 58 in June. Thank God I'm learning something. It's taken many wilderness experiences for me to start figuring out who that is. And most of them were thrust upon me. Life, life. Either those experiences can make you bitter or they can help define you. Once upon a time, he was born in a Southern family. He got his education. He was pastoring churches. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, he started having flashbacks about things he didn't remember. He went and get help, and the therapist told him, "You have post-traumatic stress disorder, and you need to go away." So out in the middle of the desert, he discovered what it was inside of him that was driving his life in so many strange ways. And it was me. And what I learned back then is that my soul belonged to God, but I was so separated from it, you see. And what I've learned then and what I've observed over all these years is that there's something within all of us that drives us. And most of us are unconscious as to what that is. I used to go to a restaurant and never sit with my back facing the restaurant. I had to be where I could see everybody and everything. Anybody here know that? Used to play a game, sit down at the table, and the person across from me would say, "Okay," looking straight at me, "tell me everything that you see around you." And I could describe every single table and all around me, who was sitting there, what they look like, and what they're wearing. You think that's normal? Does that make me highly observant? No. It made me hypervigilant. I did that because I needed to protect myself, but I didn't know that, you see. It was while I was in my wilderness that I discovered that I had been traumatized as a child and that I had stuffed it so deep within my soul that I'd forgot that it was there. But when I was 34 years old, it came back. It came back with a vengeance. And I soon started to realize what it was that was driving me, what it was that was guiding me. And it was not the Spirit of God, but it was fear. I lived in fear every day. I remember one time when I was 10 years old, my mother came to wake me up, and in front of my door, I had placed all the croquet mallets and the balls in front of the door. It worked in the cartoons. I knew it was going to work for me, too. And she says, "Why do you have all this here?" I don't know. I was just scared that someone would come into my room, you see. And then I discovered and became conscious of what was driving me. And I had a humbling experience. And I found healing. And I emerged from the wilderness with a clearer picture of who I am. You all don't know this about me, but I was called Bart up until May the 30th, 1992. But the person that I was with as I was ending that journey there in Tucson said, I want you to imagine the other side of the Santa Catalina Mountains. You see it? I said, yes, I see. And right there in that spot, there is a shovel. Okay. And I want you to dig a deep, deep hole. You let me know when you're done. And in my mind's eye, I dug, and I dug, and I dug. And he says, I want you to take everything, all the pain of your past, all the trauma that you received, all the confusion, and I want you to take it and I want you to put it into that hole. Let me know when you're done. And it took a little while because there was a lot. I want you to fill that hole in. So let me know when you're done. He says, never go back to that place again. And I didn't. Because I was hyper-vigilant and I was always afraid, I could not live in the moment. I was very frustrated because people would go to the beach and enjoy the sunset or the sunrise. I would be in it for 10 seconds and my mind was wandering off someplace because the present moment was a scary moment for me. And after I did that experience, I sat there in the desert, and I kid you not, I saw a roadrunner go by. And not long after the roadrunner, I saw a coyote go by. I knew that this was going to be a special moment. And for the first time in my life, I smelled the dirt of the desert. I smelled the dry leaves of the flowers. There was a buzz, and I was living in the moment. When I buried my old self, when I crucified and sacrificed that old, fearful self, I was in the present moment, and then I had a revelation. You want to know what the revelation is? You want to know? It's going to cost you big. God is in the present moment. That was it. I felt God profoundly. And no one can ever take that away, you see. Because God is in the present. God is not in the fears of the future. God is not in the pain and the suffering of the past. God is right here and right now. And right here and right now I am strong. And right here and right now I am fearless. Right here and right now I am loved. And right here and right now I love, you see. Because it was that day that I discovered my soul was worth more than anything else in the world. For God so loved the world that God gave God's only soul self to the world. You see? See how this works? So when I share this sermon with you, when I share these scriptures with you, when you come to me for counseling, I'm not sharing something with you that I read in a book and I thought was a good idea. I have been there and done that. And so have many of you. We know what Jesus means when he says, you must pick up your cross and follow me. Something inside of us has to die sometimes for the rest of us to live. And that does not mean that careers are not important. It does not mean that retirement plans are not important. It does not mean that college education and saving for your kids is not important. It does not mean that volunteering and giving of yourself is not important. It is just not as important as what? Your soul. And the more in tune you are to your soul, the more intimately you will know God. And the more intimately that you are with the Spirit of God, the more profoundly you're going to know yourself. And the more profoundly you know yourself, the more you can celebrate the wonderful gift that you are to the world. And whenever you start living your life in such a way that my soul is priceless and it is worth more than anything upon this earth, then you start behaving like it. And whenever you start realizing the incredible worth that you have as a human creature created in the image of God, then you start seeing that soul and that worth in everyone around you. And the world becomes a different place. You see how it works? You see how that works? For what is it to gain the world and to lose your soul? How much is your soul worth? We're going to have communion. And as you come and you take the elements, Steve, would you come up here now, please? And as you come and as you receive the elements, I want you to be very conscious of, what is my soul worth? Am I living in my soul? Am I living in intimacy with God? If the answer is yes, then part of your body. And He will renew the spirit that's willing to be renewed. And if something in you has to die and you're afraid to do it by yourself, come see me. I will help you die. Ask people who've been here. Have I helped any of you die around here? Yes. And you're more alive now, are you not? Yes, because we went on that journey together, you see. Be willing to do whatever it takes to die to your old self and be resurrected in you in the Spirit of God, one who knows what motivates you, one who knows what drives you, one who has certainty that I am a child of God, and God lives in me, and this is how I express it to the world around me. Come, the table is ready. On the night of his betrayal, the disciples took the bread, or Jesus took the bread.